You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Monday, February 14th, 2022, and as I'm sure you know, today is Valentine's Day. Now, Valentine's Day is loosely based on the story of an early Christian martyr, Saint Valentine. According to legend, Saint Valentine was a physician or a doctor, and he was also a priest. We know that he was imprisoned around the year 260 in Rome for being a Christian. And he was very likely discovered that he was a Christian because he was marrying or performing the marriages of Roman soldiers. At the time, Roman soldiers were not allowed to marry. It was seen that their job as a soldier was the only thing they did with their life. They were not allowed to have wives or families. And also the fact that they were getting married by a priest meant that they too were Christians. So he was imprisoned. While in prison, legend tells us that he, through prayer, restored the sight of the jailer's daughter and converted both of them. Eventually, he ended up in the Colosseum where he was beaten and beheaded when he refused to deny his faith. And so, my friends, go ahead and celebrate Valentine's Day with hearts and candy. But never forget that today we are celebrating a man who loved above all else, Jesus Christ. This is not about romantic love. This is about true love for our Creator and our Savior. So this week on Catholic Sprouts, we are going to begin to prepare for Lent, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. We are going to have a really fun series here on the podcast where we explore sin, specifically the 7 big sins that all of us deal with in our lives. But we're going to start this process by talking about sin in general. Unfortunately, sin is something that we all deal with. In small ways or big ways, we all face temptation every single day. Sometimes we say no to that temptation, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we commit sin. We are all sinners. Every single member of the Catholic Church is a sinner. We are a church for sinners. We have a sacrament specifically designed to wash away that sin and to give us a new start. Of course, that sacrament is reconciliation. So we're going to talk about sin so we have a better understanding. And we are also going to look at one man's life and choices so that we can better understand what sin is. And that person is perhaps the most notorious sinner in human history. That person is Judas of Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus. So before we get to Judas, let's talk about what sin is. So sin is, and this is the definition we're going to be using all week, sin is either a wound or a break in a relationship with either God or other people. These wounds to a relationship or the broken relationship is oftentimes the result of either words, thoughts, actions, or inactions. So it's something I did, something I didn't do, something I said, something I thought that wounded or even ended my relationship with another person or my relationship with God. The key piece that we need to remember is that it is when I did something I knew was wrong. I knew it was wrong. Now, when I was a little girl, I overheard someone say a curse word. I didn't even understand it was a bad word. And then I repeated it. Now, in that situation, it was not a sin because I had no idea that was a bad word. And perhaps you've had the same experience. But as soon as I knew, as soon as someone said, hey, wait, that is a bad word. This is the horrible meaning of what you just said. Then saying it again is a sin, right? So there needs to be that piece of knowing. Now, there are 2 types of sins. Perhaps you've learned about this before. There are sins that we call venial sins and sins that we call mortal sins. So venial sins are those wounds to relationships. They don't break them, but they do damage either our relationship with others or with God. Mortal mortal, as you can probably hear from the word, this kills the relationship, destroys it. It is such a bad action, thought, or deed that it ends it. Now, a lot of times when I was a kid, I would wonder, well, is this a venial sin or is that a mortal sin? And the answer is that it totally depends on the situation. For example, a lie. A lie can be something, a very simple white lie. It can just be sort of something silly. It might not have much damage on a relationship at all. Of course, it is still a sin. But a different kind of lie, a lie told over and over again, a lie about something that's super personal or serious, that could easily become a mortal sin. So it depends on the situation. It depends on the desires of our heart when we commit that sin. So the final thing to realize is that sins are such a big deal because it could destroy our relationship with God. And we're not just talking about the relationship here now in this moment, but our eternal relationship with God. And of course, that eternal relationship with God ends in heaven. So when we commit a mortal sin, it is jeopardizing our relationship with God that will end in eternal paradise. And this is why it is so essential that we go to confession, that we do penance, that we promise to make up for our feelings, and we strive to not commit sin. So tomorrow we are going to start talking about Judas, about the various sins that we see him commit in the Gospels, and ultimately how it did totally destroy his relationship with God and Jesus Christ. But I have one challenge for you this week. I really challenge you, if you haven't been to confession recently in the past month or weeks, that you find time to do that. We need to be going to confession regularly because these little wounds, even if they're venial sins, they do add up. And as we'll see through the life of Judas, if we're not dealing with the little sins, we can easily fall into the big ones. And so start finding time, look at your parish bulletin, talk to your priest, and decide when you will next go to confession.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be.
Just one more note. We hope to journey with you through Lent with our Jesus tree. 2 versions. One goes through the Gospel of Matthew, one goes through the Gospel of John. If you are wanting to grab any supplies for Lent, we are quickly approaching our shipping deadline. So if you want to explore our materials for Lent, please check the notes in this podcast episode. And we hope that you and your family have a very holy and fruitful Lent.
This show is a production of the Spoke Street Media Podcast Network. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.